Hello, leader. Welcome back to the Fierce Factor podcast. It's your leadership coach, Kaylee here, and you are tuning into episode number 209. This week, I decided to play for you a raw interview that happened recently at the end of a filming day. It was one of those spontaneous moments where I changed out of my work suit and back into my cozy clothes. And for those of you who do these days, you know how exhausting they are. It was one of those let your hair down moments. And just spontaneously sitting on the couch, I was packing up to leave and had just plopped down there for a moment. And my team members who were there with me started asking me questions about ALT, which is our inaugural upcoming live event on May 17th and 18th in Newport Beach, California. At one point, the videographer who was packing up his stuff decided it would be fun to plop a microphone on my sweatshirt and to record our conversation. And so we had this unscripted, unprompted, and unprepared for conversation. It's just 17 or so minutes of discussion around why I decided to create ALT. And in this conversation, I share my experience in corporate America, my frustrations around manufacturing key opinion leaders in our industry, and why so many women who are not frequenting the stages of our biggest conferences have some of the most dynamic and inspiring stories I've ever heard. So my goal by playing this little interview, so to speak, with you is to give you a vulnerable glimpse into my brain and truthfully just listen in on the kind of discussions that are happening behind the scenes. Having contrarian views can make me controversial, and I honestly have and will continue to pay the price for that. It's cost me lucrative partnership opportunities and endorsements, but I believe to my core that if I stay true to my convictions and find a way to pursue my mission, even while swimming upstream, so to speak, I can overcome anything. And that's the role model I want to be for you. Please know that my viewpoints are curated based on my personal experiences and are in no way intended to demean or offend anyone who sees the world from a different frame of reference. I'm just stating my opinions and taking action on them instead of keeping them to myself. And I pray for everyone to have the courage to do that. Okay, Goddess, enjoy this private discussion about what's missing for female entrepreneurs in our space. Enjoy. Hi there, welcome to the Fierce Factor podcast. I'm your host, Kaylee Lindholm. And I think it's time for us women to shift the conversation in business and step into our feminine leadership to do the most iconic work the aesthetic industry has ever seen. Each week, I'll be bringing a powerful dose of strategy, sarcasm, solutions, and sass that will rev up your creativity and ignite your brilliance as you link arms with me along our shared path of personal and professional growth in 20 minutes or less. Let's go. No, I'm just pumped. I'm excited. I feel nervous and excited and anxious and feel like it's just been an idea. And a lot of times I feel like an idea that came from where there's no answer for, no solution. And just some of the gaps that I have personally experienced as a speaker, as an attendee, as a speaker, as an exhibitor. I've been on all the sides of the conferences in our industry, and there's some really good ones. And then there's sort of this trend where I feel like a lot of our clients who are trying to sort and sift and seek out what information to get, they don't know where to go, or they go get the same content, same curriculum, especially on the business side. And one of the big challenges is, as clinical providers and owners, you tend to see them take preference for the clinical stuff and missing some of the business tracks. So if there sometimes could be a cadaver course, and then I didn't get to learn that. So I think what I see are just so many times the entrepreneur, the business owner is going to the clinical and then sending practice manager to the business. And there's so much to be learned through an experience where they're investing in not only learning the business stuff, but the leadership and being around other women who are going through the same things.
I love that. And I remember you said that you wanted to make it more interactive than other conferences that you've been to in the past. So what's that going to look like?
I think we tend to see more lectures and your 20-minute, which I understand as a conference organizer, you're trying to get as much in as possible. And you don't want people to fall asleep because most speakers aren't really that dynamic. We don't know, right? Until you learn how to be. But I have realized even just having been a couple years at Aesthetic Next as an example and given talks, but then also had the opportunity to give workshops and what an hour and a half is being in the room together where you're hearing real lived experiences and people are asking questions. And then somebody can say, oh, I'm dealing with that too. Or here are some best practices. Here's how I handle that situation. And I think the biggest gap for me is that you go sit in a room, you see someone on stage, and number one, you don't know if it's a sales pitch because it's what's the motive for speaking? Or maybe it's just a really great conversation, but they're talking at you. Or it's them talking about their successes. And here's how I got to the peak where I am, right? And as someone who's sitting in the audience, you're okay, this is what I need to do to get to there. And the reality is we know, working with women so intimately on a day-to-day basis, the growth happens in the failures. It's not in the achievement of the thing. It's when that employee left, when I made that bad decision, when I made a bad investment, when I thought this was going to happen a certain way and it didn't. And that's when our heads spin around and the growth is hey, how do I grow from this and overcome the situation so that I can show up into that same adversity again through a different lens as a different woman? And there's so many success stories that we get to have exposure to every single day working with our clients that the world doesn't get because they're not being endorsed to be on stage. And so I wanted to create that stage for them. And it's a stage that's built around an authentic message of vulnerability of hey, this was my biggest fear. I experienced it and I was able to get through it by doing this. I think it's going to be a different dynamic when everybody has a conversation in the room like that.
I love that. Do you have your lineup planned out? Do you have a vision for the different type of people that you want to be speaking, or how are you kind of picking who is going to be on?
Yeah, it sort of started where we had our academy retreat even last year, and everybody was sitting around the fire pit we should have our own conference. And a lot of people say that, and I think it was more of just I'm tired of the same old stuff, let's all learn from each other. But then for me, I wouldn't say selfishly, more unselfishly, I felt well, let's do this not just for the academy. Let's bring this to the industry. And quite honestly, I would love to bring this beyond our industry. I think that the thought leadership that these women bring to the table transcend just aesthetics and wellness. They're just building multi-million-dollar empires as just gritty founders. What that is something so incredible. So they're women who are doing the thing, and I think I kind of built this whole agenda backwards. Normally you would seek out the speaker first and then have them talk on their thing. And I actually chose the topics that I believed underpinned the challenges that female entrepreneurs have in our space. And then I'm bringing in people, and in some cases, multiple people who can talk on that one subject because they did that in their business, right? So for example, we have Blair, who she was working with an agency paying multiple six figures a year for them to run her marketing, and ended up having a complete, she'll share her story, but situation where she had to let them go and then rebuild her entire e-com strategy brick by brick. And she does multi-million dollars a year in e-com, and she's her own contractor, right? And her own agency subcontracting out. So she can talk about how do you do that? Because she had to build that up from scratch. So stories like that, or how women, we have Jessica, who her biggest fear, and I think a lot of women's biggest fear, is you train an employee and they leave. Well, she did. And not only did one leave, but her two top employees left and then started a business down the street. And so she's going to talk about that story and about what she's learned growing her empire, around handling competition. So they're just real lived stories of triumph, really. And I think that conversation, the shift in that narrative, is going to put everyone in the room in a position where they want to feel comfortable to open up and share their stories as well, and not feel like they're in isolation or they're alone. It's very lonely running a business, but they're going to be oh, cool. You got there because you were here. It's going to be a really fun, dynamic faculty that is actually sort of inbred. Like there'll be speakers that are their attendees that are going to just pop up on stage and talk. We're going to workshop and have a little bit of a different format in one room where everyone can just sit and not have to like bring their Dr. Scholl's blister pads to like get to the next track over.
Don't have to pop their sneakers and their...
Yeah, like your little ballerina shoes into your purse.
That's really funny. No, I love that. I like that it's interactive, and I like that the people who are speaking are also there learning.
Yeah, I mean, all the speakers that I've talked to that are coming, have been a lot of women who have been through Voice of Impact and really done the hard work on unraveling their own story and now being able to share that in a way that resonates and inspires, empowers other women. It's not just about being dynamo on stage. It's about realizing I have something really important to share.
Yeah.
And I want to be at a place where I feel confident enough to share it with other people because I realize that it can help them. And I think that's a lot of like the intrinsic work that these women have done going through Voice of Impact program. And then others just, hey, I really want to help. Our philosophy is as the tide rises, the boats rise. And I think one of the biggest challenges that I have had personally as a female entrepreneur is a lot of these girl boss masterminds are like, they're not building companies, like real companies, like sellable businesses, like assets. And they're not talking about things like private equity and where do we invest and how do I build a business with my husband because he works for me. Those conversations aren't being had. And that's just because of the pure percentage of women who actually are doing that. The aesthetic industry is a rarity in that sense. So I think we're in a room with women who are empowering and encouraging each other, but not in a way that's just like 1, 2, 3, rah, rah community. Well, truthfully, because I'm kind of like a lone wolf. You guys know that. But when you're around the right people, that you're in a headspace, people like think like you, that are doing things the right way, like the real way, and dealing with like raw, painful situations, and they're willing to share that, it's different. And these women are doing deals with each other, I mean, how many women in our academy are going through each other's training programs and they're paying real money and working on real collaborations on projects. And I think that's something really special and that I aim to facilitate through the experience.
I don't know if this needs to even be pulled, but I'm just curious, is it going to be all women speaking?
I don't know for sure, but that's who we work with. So there'll be a lot of women on stage. I can tell you that much.
I love that. It's going to be awesome. I feel like something really special too is I feel like most of the people that, from my experience that you've worked with, are actually cool and engaging, which is not something that I've experienced at other conferences. I don't mean to like talk shit on camera, but I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I've been to these conferences and they're just like so dull and boring. My experience is that like literally I feel like almost every single client I've worked with that I've been referred to from you who has been your client, like they're actually very cool and interesting and like fun. And I'm just like, wow, I would actually like listening to you talk. Which is not something I would say about very many.
They are.
Yeah.
They are. We have the best clients, but also everything I teach about building an ecosystem that uplifts and supports you. I mean, that's because we're really particular about knowing what we do and how specific of a result that we look to help our clients achieve. So that takes a certain mindset, takes a certain kind of person. And we see all kinds of kinds, but one of the things that it's interesting, like in our discovery calls, we're not selling our programs. We're listening to the other person on the other side of the phone, the way that they talk about their ability to get out of the situation they're in. Are they taking accountability? Do they have a growth mindset? Are they willing to invest and put the work in? Or do they feel like they've just been burned again and again and again? And it makes a difference because we're not selling a TV, it's not a transaction. It's a relationship and a journey that somebody is going on with themselves. It's major. They have to be willing to make a transformation and go through an identity shift to become somebody entirely different. There's not been anything in my life that's challenged me in the way that growing and scaling a business has. I don't even know how to describe it, but women who do it know. Like, if you know, you know.
it's something so raw. You are faced with like the traumas that you had as a child. And I didn't even have trauma and I'm finding trauma. So it's insane. Like, where did this come from? How am I thinking this about myself? Why am I responding this way? Why am I so emotional? And you have to like be able to regulate through that. So it's not for everyone, but I think that's why we have such amazing clients. So what are you looking forward to at the conference, Shan?
What's coming up for me a little bit is how you're talking about how all of our clients are so great and so cool. I think so much of what we talk about and what we talk about in Voice of Impact is really aligning with their why. Mm-hmm. So for the people that are going to come and be talking to these women, the reason they're so great is because they do passionately align with their why. Mm-hmm. And they're in it not for themselves and what they're going to get from it, but it's what they're giving to everybody. So like the giver's heart.
Yeah.
You know?
I love that you said that because I do feel like we're in a position, I'll speak for myself too, like being a speaker on stage, you have to think about so often that your time and like, how are you monetizing what you're doing and what's your real reason for standing up there? Like a lot of times it's like, well, I want people to go to my booth. And a lot of speakers are speaking because they're being sponsored by a device company or, you know, a pharma company to talk about their products. And it's not a bad thing. It's just, we don't always know the motive. And when you have speakers that are there to serve and there to give, it's a different energy flow. I mean, there's nothing worse than like getting excited about a talk title and then walking in and seeing like Joe Schmo from such and such company standing on stage. You're like, really? You're teaching that topic? Like, come on, you know? And it's like the full sales pitch. And you're like, snooze fest.
Yeah. And I think too, like the other thing I'm excited about is I see day to day the community that we've built and that our clients have built alongside of us, mm-hmm. and just the things that they say and the stories that they share and how having a community like this makes them feel like they're not so alone, that people can relate to what they're feeling and what they go through. So to be able to bring that to
like the world
on a broader scale, to have 100 women feel that is super exciting for me.
I know. I feel like it's like proud mom moment. Yeah. Like it's conversations that we're having behind closed doors that are like not out there in the public. And to think that we're going to bring everybody together to like have that conversation.
Yeah. I almost envision it like a sleepover, like girl talk time at the sleepover.
But everyone leaves with like $1 million strategy and like a life-changing confidence to like go out and crush it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, are you having like specific talks or, I mean, obviously, but what are your talks and workshops?
I have no idea. Our workshops are going to be like one more practice management focused and one more leadership focused. So like mission, vision, values. And then we're going to teach like a systems workshop. I know I'll give like a probably opener, and I'm going to be definitely interviewing and being a part of the conversation. I've been asked to give a couple different talks, but honestly, I'm boring. Like, I mean, but truly, like, I think, honest to God, the stories, like Shan's saying, what we know about these women. And I'm so lucky because I get to interview so many amazing people on my podcast too. Like having those conversations, it's almost like everybody gets to have that and be a part of like those interviews and then gets to step outside and talk about it. And so there's going to be plenty of downtime and pool time and cool time and fun time and all of that too. So like, it's not just like everybody's just powering out and like ready to when's this thing over.
Yeah.
But gets to like network and connect. And
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
It's so fun.
Me too.
How many days is it, 2?
Yeah, 2 days. Really like a good day and a half and then a half a day of hanging out kind of thing. So yeah, I'm excited.
Me too. Yeah.
I'll see you guys there.
Yes, you will.
I will be there for sure.
That was fun.
I thought that this was good.
We'll see you.
Well, you're such a good off the cuff.
Yeah, I would just ask one question and be like, I don't know, I'm just gonna pull from that.
Oh, I feel like I don't shut up. What's crazy is I get so nervous sitting in with the camera on me.
No,
you know?
it's like a different.
No, you don't.
Well, I don't right now, but I mean when I have the actual.
Well, it's a different feel.
No, but I actually like this, and I actually feel like moving forward when we do film, we can do this more, and like if we plan out topics and questions better, I think it would make really good content. Because I think it's almost like that podcast style content where you're just like pulling 45-minute clips that I think it'll be really good.
Well, I'm hopeful when I have my little studio that the podcasts will all feel more like this, you know, in general, like a little bit more being on Zoom. You're like mid-list of questions, you know. There's just something about energy of being with people, which is why we're having a live event. You know, it's just completely different.
It is. I'm really excited for it. I think it's going to be really awesome.
The best ever was a client saying, I just booked my flight to a mystery event. I don't know what I'm coming to, but I'm coming. I loved it.
This is like the most last minute marketing ever, because it was just like, we have to do this kind of thing.
No, I think it'll be good. And I think you just have to do it. You just have to start at some point. And I think we've been talking about it forever.
Well, I did have like that PopCon in 2020, and we were running CTS. We haven't had the bandwidth to pull this off. It's a big investment and a big risk and all the things, but I don't care. Like, I just need to be with like all these amazing women in a room in real life, and we need to do it different. We need to just flip this thing upside down. There's no exhibit hall. So there are no sponsors. It is everyone pays for a ticket and shows up, and speakers roll.
And how did you come up with what to call it?
Oh my gosh, I just knew when it came to like my brain, but I was trying to think of something that like thought leadership, because that was really a big focus for me this year, has been how do we develop real thought leaders? Like, this was one thing where when I was working in corporate America, one of my jobs, like as a manager, was to develop KOLs. So I would go find kind of like the young up and coming great speakers who were getting really good results with like the devices that our company was selling. And I would prep them to get on stage and talk about how great of an experience they had with our company. And I learned a lot about, then I knew how sort of manufactured that KOL system was. I mean, it's great for companies, right, to do that. But when I started meeting women that were like, oh, I went through a divorce and my business failed, and then I had to start over again. I lost all my money. My husband took my money, and then I got going, and then I got cancer, right? Like, this is for real. You heard Jenny's story, right? You talk to women like that, and then they're like, yeah, and I rebuilt this brick by brick. I've got 2 locations, 10 employees. I run it like this. We have this proprietary methodology and the story to tell. And you're like, wait, why are you not on stage? Like, how am I not learning about that? And it started to make me think about this sort of dysfunction and the dichotomy between like true thought leadership and KOL speakers. And I'll tell you, when I was selling lasers, like, we would all have that back pocket KOL agreement where it's like, okay, well, you want to be a KOL for us, I'll give you 30 grand off of the device that cost us $7,000 to manufacture, and you're going to pay 200,000. But anyway, I'll give you a deal, and then you're going to get on stage, you're going to take phone calls. That was the transactional exchange of what created a KOL, or key opinion leader, and this relationship of industry with people who were put on that pedestal. And so the idea behind Voice of Impact and what we're doing in our academy, and what I would like to eventually be known for as somebody who helped bring these voices out to the world and expose them for what they should be. And so I was playing with the whole thought leadership advisory, and I'm like, but can we make it different? How could it be that, but different? And then I put Thought Leadership Advisory TLA on paper, and I flipped it. I was like, wait, and I flipped it literally backwards, and it was ALT, which to me was like alternative. And I'm like, wait, this is the alternative Thought Leadership Advisory, TLA flipped on its head.
I love that.
And I'm like, that's it. It's a place for the rise up of the unconventional thinkers, of the women that are like, we're going to do it different. And so it's just like, there's the baby.
The baby was born.
The little baby out. The baby. Yeah. And then I've like put the little notes, like I use the notes app in my phone, and I like have alt, and it's like at the top of every day I'm like popping in there with little ideas and inspo and who's it for, you know, and I started writing, like, one of the things was like faith-based thinkers, like women that are like, they go to church, but then they also say that for it. Like, I was like writing like so specific. I'm like, this person that's like that dynamic. So, and of course, like we have so many real women.
I feel like
that is like our community.
So in the academy.
Yeah.
Name like 5 people to that.
Yeah, totally. Let me put on my Sunday best, but don't fuck with me either. Like, out of my way, bitches.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then Shannon booked for Friday night. There's only one rooftop lounge in all of Newport Beach. And so we did the big up level. We're not just on the lawn for the cocktail reception. Like we're up at like...
We're elevated
at like the actual, like we rented like half of the bar and then this like topside lounge with, it's this like room with like a 360 degree couch in there basically.
Really cool.
So it's afterward, like women can grab a cocktail and sit and just have like downloads, you know, with each other, exchange numbers and do business deals and stuff like that.
It's going to be awesome.
I'm excited. Yay. Can't wait. Thank you. Well, I'm proud of everyone and what can be. We'll see.
Yeah.
Listen, leader, if you're vibing with me here, hang tight because I have a brand new resource for you. You are a successful, confident, powerful woman who just isn't into being average. No, you have a calling, and part of that calling is requiring you to level up. And I know that if you're working across the next $1 million milestone in your business, you need to be in the right circles. And perhaps that's why you found us. I'd love to invite you to join The Blueprint, a weekly resource for inspired, provocative thinkers who are taking this conversation to the next level. Get access to free business tools, podcast supplements, guideposts, and direct communication with me and my expert team. And of course, a masterfully curated circle of women making big moves and disrupting the status quo in aesthetics and wellness. You can link directly through the show notes or head to klcconsultants.com/blueprint. It's time to elevate. See you there, goddess.